What's up everyone, and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Jorge Masvidal being on the UFC side in dealings with Nate Diaz. With just one fight left on his current UFC deal, Nate Diaz has been vocal about getting a fight deal done and then possibly retiring. Many people don't really believe that Diaz will actually retire, and they just feel that he simply wants to get paid more money by fighting outside of the organization, possibly even in boxing. A potential bout against Dustin Poirier fell through, but that fight would have been great to watch. Both guys are natural lightweights, and it's pretty surprising that they've never fought each other, given how long they've been in the sport. The two did go back and forth a bit after Poirier's failed attempt to win the lightweight title last December, but ultimately, those plans were nixed. Diaz recently aired his frustrations in getting a fight deal done and stated this on Twitter. "I've been trying to fight for a year and months. I also tried to fight Khamzat for the last month and a half, but he was hurt, had visa issues, overweight, and now this is off getting married instead of fighting. WTF? I'm trying to get a fight with a real fighter ASAP. July." It's unclear what the plans are for Diaz, who hasn't fought since he dropped a unanimous decision to Leon Edwards exactly 1 year ago next week. That was the first time he stepped back in the octagon since he lost to Jorge Masvidal in 2019 for the BMF title. The lead up to that fight was incredible, with all the pomp and spectacle you would expect from two hard-nosed veterans with long and storied careers. Masvidal won via doctor stoppage and then went on to challenge for the welterweight title twice. Since that night in Madison Square Garden at UFC 244, Masvidal has lost 3 straight. But Gamebred continues to stay active and is even angling to potentially fight Conor McGregor or Gilbert Burns later this year. That's why, in a recent interview with the MMA Hour, Masvidal is questioning why Diaz is taking so damn long to step back into the cage. This is what he stated.
You make all this noise that if you had round 4 and 5, what were you gonna do, brother? Just lay on your back and hold your stomach and get your face pounded. That's all you were gonna do, So I don't respect him too much, and I really what he's saying. I think a lot of it is just, just him trying to get the fans on his side. There's been a lot of fights offered to his. He just doesn't want to take them.
Masvidal goes on to call Diaz a diva, and while he doesn't really take the UFC side in dealings with other fighters, he feels that the UFC is in the right here. Masvidal talked about how he would gladly accept a rematch against Diaz, saying it would sell well, and that he would obviously win that bout. On his part, Masvidal has been called out by Michael Pereira over a stupid texting drama that the Brazilian tried to foment. But Masvidal is still one of the top fighters in the welterweight division, and while it's not likely he'll challenge for a title anytime soon, he still remains a massive draw. Both Masvidal and Diaz are, at the moment, sitting on the sidelines, so to speak. Both guys are campaigning to get fights. Would you want to see Diaz Masvidal too? And do you agree with Gamebred that Nate is acting like a diva here? Or do you feel there's more going on behind the scenes? Dustin Poirier says there's one costly mistake that he and Gaethje made against Charles Oliveira. It's no secret that Charles Oliveira is the most dangerous submission specialist in the history of the UFC. He not only holds the most submission wins in featherweight or lightweight history, but also for the history of the entire promotion, having tapped out 16 fighters out of his 30 total UFC fights so far. Oliveira also has the most finishes in UFC history with 19. That's one of the biggest reasons why other fighters prefer to just stand up with the Bronx and exchange strikes with him. Over the years, Oliveira has honed his striking skills to the point that it's become a strength, and he's shown that he can not only knock guys down to the canvas, but even finish people with strikes. It's a very special skill set that Oliveira possesses with his grappling, and it opens up other avenues for him to take the fight. That's the thing that Dustin Poirier wishes he can take back from his fight against the now former champion back at UFC 269 last December. Poirier, in a recent episode of The Fight with Teddy Atlas, he goes on to talk about how he and Justin Gaethje made a major mistake in their respective fights against Oliveira. The respect they had for the Brazilian's jiu-jitsu was simply too much, and it cost them a chance to hoist that 155-pound title. Gaethje is a former NCAA Division I All-American wrestler, but he didn't pull the trigger when he knocked down Oliveira a few times in his fight against the Brazilian at UFC 274. In talking about that, Poirier told Teddy Atlas this.
There's only one way to find out. You got to dive in. Same thing with me. I shouldn't have. Of course, you have to respect the jiu-jitsu. I've been doing jiu-jitsu forever. I'm a black belt as well. Compete with and train with the best guys in the world. And I'm confident I have good jiu-jitsu, and I just respected his too much that I didn't engage. You know, the plan was to, by any means, stay off the ground and don't play jiu-jitsu at all with this guy.
Poirier talks about how he can relate to Gaethje in this sense, as both had a chance to get on top of Oliveira and see what could happen. However, both eventually were submitted by Oliveira via rear naked choke. Poirier goes on to talk about how he, in his fight against Oliveira, forced a stalemate in the jiu-jitsu department in the second round, simply because he didn't want to give Oliveira any space to try anything, so he stayed defensive. At the moment, Oliveira is the #1 contender for the lightweight title with no established opponent yet. Meanwhile, Poirier is looking to get back in the octagon this year, and while he's already accepted a Colby Covington fight, there's no confirmation on that bout from the UFC. What do you think about Poirier's comments concerning what he and Gaethje should have done in their lightweight title fights?
I hate when there's the allegations with no foundation behind it, especially for a guy that's going through a court case with a bunch of allegations that he's saying aren't true. I don't know. I don't even want to comment on that part of it. I do wonder though, and I'm gonna get fucking shit off of this, but
please go ahead. I'm very curious.
How do they test Conor McGregor floating on a boat around the world all the time?
Very simply, they don't. There's that because he's got a Lamborghini yacht as well. You see USADA coming, you ain't catching that motherfucker.
Wow, fucking out.
I mean, listen, you're talking about Ferraris. He's got a Lamborghini, baby.
I've wondered that when I see him on his boat all the time. He's like, every time you see a picture or a video, and I get it, he probably's not posting real time exactly where he is at that time, but seemingly he's on a boat most of the time.
And so he's in Monaco. I don't know if you saw
us sending people in a fucking helicopter to fucking drop it on Conor's boat.
Yeah, I don't think USADA are testing him. Listen, we talked about this before. I'm not going to sit here and say that he's taking steroids. Masvidal said that, and a couple of other people have said that, and maybe he's taking some kind of substance, maybe to encourage the healing of the leg, you know, perhaps. Yeah. Maybe that's why he's put some size on, because he's put some size on. But I'm not saying he's taking steroids. Maybe he's taking some kind of, I don't know what it might be, something to help the bones and the rod, the titanium shin bone, to help it all fuse together and heal stronger, you know?
Don't forget to take a second to hit that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to stay up to date on all of the latest fight news. Eugene Bareman says Alex Pereira has work to do to become 185-pound contender, but Strickland is getting closer. Alex Pereira is scheduled to take on Sean Strickland at UFC 276 on July 2nd. That's the same night that middleweight champion Israel Adesanya will defend his title against #1 contender Jared Cannonier. Adesanya has been spectacular as champion of the 185-pound division, putting guys away with his striking, bringing the excitement during the pre- and post-fights, and has superstar written all over him. He's getting to a point where he's nearly clearing out the division, and while he has just a few fights to go before doing that, the UFC is trying to set up fresh challengers for the middleweight title, looking at narratives that they could sell on the horizon. I'm talking about Pereira, as the Brazilian is the first and only man to have ever knocked out Israel Adesanya. This took place in their second kickboxing bout, which happened in Brazil back in March 2017. That loss turned out to be Adesanya's last ever kickboxing fight, as he dove straight into his MMA career right after that, and immediately won via knockout later that year. 4.5 years after knocking out Adesanya, Pereira entered the UFC, and he beat Andreas Michailidis via flying knee knockout in the second round. He followed that up with a unanimous decision win over Bruno Silva this past March. In just his third fight for the promotion, and with no ranking, he's now set to take on the #4 ranked Sean Strickland on July 2nd. This fight is thought by many to be a title shot eliminator, given that Adesanya is either fighting or has already beaten the guys above Strickland. For Adesanya's coach, Eugene Bareman, Pereira isn't someone they're really looking at as a possible threat, mostly because they feel he hasn't earned the right to fight for a title yet. Again, it all depends on what happens in the Strickland-Pereira fight on July 2nd, but Bareman does not feel any sense of urgency to take on Pereira, or that they have to run anything back, seeing that they fought in kickboxing, and this is a completely different combat sport in MMA. Bareman does, however, give credit to Strickland, and feels that he has earned the right to possibly challenge for the belt should he come out on top. In a recent interview with Submission Radio, this is what Bareman stated about that.
The only reason I say Strickland is because if Strickland wins, that's a really clear-cut contender, whereas if Pereira wins, it's like, well, you've beaten one guy, you've probably got to beat some more. So if Strickland wins, there's a clear-cut fight that we can have 8 weeks later, hopefully.
On July 2nd, Pereira will be entering just his 7th professional MMA fight, his 3rd in the UFC. While he's looked good so far in the octagon, there are some people online who feel that he may not be seasoned enough to challenge Adesanya in all aspects of MMA. Adesanya has shown a lot of improvement even as champion, and that's a very scary thing for his opponents. He's gotten much better at takedown defense and has shown an ability to be able to go to the ground when it suits him and get up whenever he needs to, which is scary for someone as stand-up heavy as Pereira. But the Strickland fight will give us a lot of answers here. All of this is still a ways away, as both Pereira and Adesanya have to get past their respective opponents at UFC 276. But what do you think about Bareman's comments here? If Pereira and Adesanya win their fights, do you think this would be a great middleweight title fight? Let us know in the comments. Today's video was packed with some juicy stories from the fight world. What are your thoughts about what's going on in MMA? Don't forget to smash that like button and subscribe to the MMA Zone to see more videos just like this. See you next time.